At least a half a dozen times.
There's at least a half a dozen firms.
Prosecution for at least a half a dozen environmental violations.
At least a half a dozen federal watch lists.
They called him at least half a dozen times.
It's at least half a dozen of those.
I mean, I have half a dozen at least. Okay?
Or at least take her kayaking half a dozen times.
She's been married like at least a half a dozen times.
There's got to be at least half a dozen identities here.
Still, you walk away with at least a half a dozen clearances.
At least a dozen times already.
There's at least
A dozen more. At least a dozen SRU fight.
We need at least a dozen.